Hello and welcome to Hockey Talk. My name is Jaret Schneider along with Matt Durnan. Matt, we've had a pretty busy week here in the NHL this week. We've got a couple of, one suspension for sure. Perry got into a little bit of trouble with the league, as well as we're going to talk a little bit about fighting, some of the stage fighting, some of the things like that. We've also got a couple of teams maybe dropping some games down the stretch, games they should have won, especially last night for sure. There was one last night for sure, as well as Chicago. They're not, they've lost some regulation games, so it's about time, halfway through the year now. But the first thing I know we wanted to talk about was Perry and the suspension he got 4 games.
Yep, 4 games, and I believe the fine was $115,000 from the league. Announcement came down, I believe it was Tuesday that they made the announcement, and it was Rob Blake who said, bit of a late hit from what you see if you watch the replay, a little bit late, a little bit behind the play, but I know you're a little bit livid about it. You thought maybe it didn't quite deserve 4 games. He kind of caught Jason Zucker, I believe, from the Minnesota Wild. Kind of made a little bit of a dump out pass, had his back turned. Perry kind of caught him napping and admiring his pass a little bit. He took a 5 in a game. As far as the suspension, I'm kind of on the fence a little bit. I don't want to be, the fence there. I believe it did warrant a suspension. Maybe, I don't know if there's any concrete number for a head hit. It was pretty blatant to the head. Whether there was an intent to injure or not, it's kind of a gray area. Perry said, I wouldn't go out there. I'm not a guy that goes out there and tries to hurt guys. Perry has been suspended once before, but not a repeat offender, not on the same level as a guy like, say, Matt Cook or something like that, where he's got a history of going out there and hurting people with big hits to the head. So a little bit of a stiff penalty, but sometimes punishment does suit the crime. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I agree, actually. I think it does deserve a suspension, that's for sure. I mean, 4 games, maybe a little bit harsh. We've seen some of the suspensions in the past, not really a whole lot that even account up to 4 games, especially in the short season. Maybe that would, have something to do with it. Maybe a little bit of a less suspension just on that fact alone. But also, like, you've seen the hit. Everyone's seen the hit now, I'm sure. He's coming up the boards. He backhand passes it up the boards, and he turns and actually looks that way. He doesn't look to the middle of the ice. Whereas, I look at that play and I think, he makes the pass up the boards, okay, but if he looks to the middle, he sees Perry coming, Perry rubs him out, it's a normal hit, he's not hurt, there's no suspension.
He kind of put himself
in a penalty.
He put himself in a bit of a dangerous spot by doing that.
By turning his head, Perry, I mean, obviously, I think he could have exploded right through him a lot harder. He could have hit him a lot harder.
He's a big guy, though,
right?
He's a big guy,
right.
And when he hits you and you're not suspecting, you're going to go down fairly hard.
Absolutely. It was to the head. I think it was to the head. Mm-hmm. So in that case, I mean, I think he did slow up a little. He didn't, explode right through him, like I said. I think he kind of hit him. I mean, it was interference. It was a little bit late. You watch it in slow motion. It's definitely late then. But it was a little bit late, like you said, and then Rob Blake. But I don't think he deserves 4 games.
Blake's reasoning, because he delivered the actual announcement as opposed to Shanahan, who usually does it. But Blake's biggest reasoning was that when you look at it on the tape, Perry did have a reasonable enough time that he kind of could have checked up or maybe turned away and avoided making the hit, but he decided not to and followed through on the hit. So I guess that's where you kind of get the, you see a guy, you've got him targeted, you've got, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, maybe you've got enough time, you could kind of peel off. Speed of the game, as we always talk about, things are going on down there. You don't know how fast it is for Perry on the ice. Maybe, he sees a guy, he's zeroed in, and all he's thinking is hitting the guy. Doesn't cross his mind to turn away. But, kind of an unfortunate thing, but you can't leave it unpunished, and Anaheim's kind of got to suffer. It's going to be interesting now to see what Anaheim does, because he is, a key player. Him and Ryan Getzlaf have been tearing it up, and what I thought was another interesting thing here is that this kind of, a little bit unrelated, but Anaheim is looking for what they're going to do with Corey Perry at the end of the year. This could be kind of the watermark for them here. So if they find out, how are we without Corey Perry as opposed to with him? If they start to struggle in these 4 games, they look really bad and they're really missing him, then you might see them really hurry up to make that deal rather than trade him. Because I've had a few people come to me and ask, what do you think is going to happen with Perry? Is he going to be traded, or is he going to walk? Are people going to pick him up in free agency? And I don't think Anaheim can really afford to just let a guy like Perry walk. So this is kind of going to be the measuring stick for them, whether they can perform without him. And if they can, then they say, you know what, we can kind of test the market, maybe trade him. If they find out that they struggle without him, get that deal done.
Yeah, we'll see, because obviously Getzlaf just signed that monster deal this year for 6 years or whatever. So I know that was one thing with Perry. This is the last year he's in a contract year here. So obviously looking to re-sign him. But yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I never really thought of that. But yeah, these 4 games could make or break depending on what they do with him. If they decide to, obviously you definitely don't want him to walk, because I mean you don't want to lose a 50-goal scorer just out the door like that. I mean, obviously look to get something for it. But other than that, I mean we could see something like that. Other things I know we saw this week were some fighting. I know there was one McLaren, the Leafs,
Yeah.
dropping the gloves.
Yeah, and that's another big hot topic issue again with the NHL is staged fighting, fights that don't really have anything to do with
Like
the game.
30 seconds into the game.
30 seconds
whatever,
of the
yeah.
game as it was with McLaren. I think it was 26 seconds
Yeah.
it was. And then McLaren, pretty seasoned, tough guy in the NHL. He's got over 20, 25 fights, I think, in the NHL, a whole bunch in the American League. And I think it was David Jarzynski that he knocked out, who's got good number of AHL fights. He's been a scrapper in the AHL, but never had an NHL fight. I don't know if you can really, qualify the differences. Fighters are fighters in almost any league. You fight NHL guys doesn't necessarily make you an all-time heavyweight that can't be beat up by an AHL guy, let's say. But as far as stage fighting, a lot of people are of the opinion, there is no place for it in the game. I'm not entirely that hard on it. I don't think there really is too much purpose for it. But at the same time, you see teams where the fight's going to happen anyways. Say the game before, there was a lot of, hustle and bustle, teams kind of pushing each other around, getting scrappy, getting in each other's faces, and that the fight's going to carry over to the next game. Why not get out of the way right away? Say, okay, that's it, it's done with, instead of guys getting chippy all game, kind of waiting and saying, when's this fight going to happen? Why not, say, okay, me and you, we'll settle this in the first 5 minutes. The first two tough guys, when we get our first shift, we'll settle this, we'll get out of the way, and the coach can kind of tie to the bench there, and the teams can go on and play.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, McLaren, obviously, he's fought lots. He's been a tough guy all year. He's beat up a few guys already this year. I don't think he's lost a fight, not one that I've seen. And Jarzynski, it was his first ever fight. So, I mean, bit of a mismatch. Obviously, Jarzynski's looking to, kind of prove himself in the NHL. Obviously, with his first fight ever, 26 seconds in, like you mentioned, it was obviously staged. I think he's looking to, maybe get some confidence going for his team, who had dropped a couple of games before, and then the Leafs as well. I mean, they kind of in a bit of a slouch there for a bit, but I mean, so a bit of a starter to the game, get some energy going. But I mean, the way McLaren had taken a hold of him, I don't know. I seen a vulnerable, well, not vulnerable, but I mean, it's too bad, I guess, to see Jarzynski go down the way he did.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. That thing could happen.
Yeah,
it could happen in a fight that's not staged. It's not necessary to say that the stage fight is the reason that he got hurt. I think that a lot of people's complaint is that it doesn't have anything to do with the game. It's completely aside. It's kind of a sideshow. It's just a personal little thing between two guys who just set up, say. And from what I've heard is that McLaren had originally challenged Jarzynski before the game, said, are we going to do this? And Jarzynski turned him down. And then when the game started, I guess changed his mind and said, what, I got to do this for my team. And stepped in and unfortunately got hurt. But shoes on the other foot, it could have happened the other way. Jarzynski could have knocked out McLaren, then it could be a completely different conversation. But as far as the fights that are actually staged, you don't want to see them, but it's kind of hard because where do you draw the line? You say, okay, no stage fighting, and then what determines a stage fight? Then you're going to have, when we saw last year, there was a big issue of anytime a guy lays a big hit, you're expected to go and fight a guy after a big hit. And then the definition of staged kind of gets skewed, and you don't really know what is a staged fight. What fight isn't staged? There's kind of those spontaneous ones where a guy gives a guy a shot in the back, maybe a guy turns around, gives a stick and say, okay, let's go. But more often than not, when a couple guys are on the ice, say a Colton Orr and Chris Neal or something like that, or Brandon Prust is on the ice for Montreal against Milan Lucic, you kind of can see that it's going to happen. So you can almost define almost any fight as somewhat being staged. So how you can get stage fighting out of the game, I don't know, it's something you really got to look into.
Yeah, and then there's other things, obviously, that come into play. Like, I mean, we've seen this year, especially the visor penalty. Yeah. The penalty for fighting with a visor on. So, I mean, we've seen that a couple of times. I've seen it last night as well. Two guys going for a fight. It's kind of an advantage for a guy without a visor. I mean, if a guy with a visor is fighting a guy without a visor, I mean, the guy with the visor is going to get a penalty.
Yeah.
And, I mean, maybe I'm not saying you want to go after that guy and say, hey, let's try and fight a guy with a visor to pick up the extra two. But, I mean, you could see it happen. And then, obviously, when they go to square off, the other guy's going to pick up the instigator for the visor, which is, I don't know. I think it's kind of a dumb rule. I mean, I think
I don't like it at all.
I think they should just square up and take their helmets off.
No, I don't like it at all.
Really, I used to see, take their helmets off, throw your helmets away, and just square up and fight, right?
But
if you want to wear a visor, but I mean, take it off when you go to fight.
A lot of the time, it's kind of a spontaneous. I don't know, it might be the one you're talking about, was the other night, it was Ottawa and Boston, when McQuaid ran over Chris Neal in the corner, and I believe it was Weirkosh that jumped in for Ottawa, and that's just an immediate reaction. That's an immediate reaction.
Right?
McQuaid got nothing for the hit on Neal.
See, that's not a stage fight. That's a fight.
No, he got nothing for the hit on Neal. Weirkosh jumped in, defending his teammate, didn't like the hit, thought it was dirty, went after McQuaid, fought him, and then Ottawa ends up on the penalty kill because Weirkosh is wearing a visor. So, I mean, it's a spontaneous thing. The guy sees this guy go down, his first reaction is to jump in and help him out. I mean, his first reaction isn't, oh shoot, I'm wearing a visor, I should unbuckle and before I go and fight this guy. You know, it's kind of something that you got to get rid of that. If you're going to say there's an instigator rule, it's got to apply to everybody, whether you're wearing a visor or not. If you start the fight, go ahead and give them the instigator, but you shouldn't be punished for trying to protect yourself.
No, because they're also trying to talk about bringing visors in and making everyone wear visors.
You can't make
visors mandatory. So then, what do you do then, right? So I mean,
they're kind of in a weird area with that. I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll take a quick break though. We'll be right back. We got Chicago and we got some teams that have lost some tough games. So we'll be right back. You're watching Hockey Talk right here on Shaw TV. As we mentioned, a pretty busy week this week. We've got a couple of things here. Chicago, actually, who were undefeated other than the regulation games, but now they've lost a couple of regulation games. They've lost two, actually, in the span of 1 week. So back-to-back games, actually, too. And the first one came against Colorado. Maybe if we go back to picks from last week a little bit.
Here we go.
Someone picked Colorado to beat Chicago. I don't know who that was, but one of us. And then anyway, they ended up losing to Edmonton the night after in a shootout, about a 6-5 game. So Chicago dropping 2 games. You
got to be careful when you say shootout, though. Shootout has a new meaning because now you can actually play in a shootout.
You're right.
It was a high-scoring game.
It was a high-scoring game.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good pickup by you there.
Yeah.
So obviously we'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, Chicago still first by, I believe, 6 or 7 points over Anaheim, who actually still has a fairly decent record. I mean, they'd still be number 1 any other year, right?
Yeah, no one in Chicago is really too worried, I don't think, about back-to-back losses after the start they had. They've basically clinched, and I think we were talking about it before the show, that they can essentially play worse than 500 hockey, and they'll still clinch a top 3 spot with the lead that they've actually accumulated from the first 25 games. They built up quite a lead. I wish I had said on the show, I kind of felt like their first loss in regulation would be in pretty ugly fashion, that someone was going to catch them flat. They were going to come out a little bit slow, and Colorado had given them a good game earlier. I think before.
2 nights before, actually.
A couple nights before, they played them to a tight game where Chicago, I think, scored a couple late, and it was Carcillo that scored the winner, if that was the game that I'm thinking of. So, Colorado, you knew Colorado was going to be hungry after they put that kind of scare to them. And Chicago was kind of teetering on the edge. They weren't beating teams too badly, just kind of squeaked by Columbus in one game. They were getting it done. They went to overtime, I believe, in one other game, but they were eventually going to lose. The 6-2 game against Colorado, it was bound to happen after that many games. You're going to have a stinker every now and then. Every team does.
There was 5 goals in the second period.
Oh, every team does. It happens. Right? So. But the kind of surprising thing was that they didn't really bounce back. They didn't really rally. It kind of looked that they were shell-shocked when they came out against even Edmonton, gave up 6 against Edmonton, and I mean the scoreline did end up 6-5. Chicago popped a couple late, but that game was pretty much entirely dominated by Edmonton. So, what happens from now on, I guess, is kind of in their hands, whether they get back on track and rally off a streak, whether they kind of say, if they get complacent, say we do have a good place in the standings, we can kind of play a little bit easy. We don't have to really push ourselves. Let's kind of take it easy until the playoffs. I don't know. Do you think that they still go back on a streak? Do you think they dominate? Do you think they kind of just are another team for the rest of the season, or what?
I would say I still think they're going to play I guess you could say above average hockey, according to the whole league. So I mean, obviously they won't go undefeated. I think that they'll lose their 7-8 more games in regulation. I think, and maybe Anaheim pulls it close. But other than that, I still think Chicago might still run away with this. They still definitely have the high power offense that they do. Going back to the games, obviously they actually had the first goal against Colorado. Jonathan Taves scored a pretty nice one, and they went up 1-0 in that game against Colorado. But Colorado scored one in that period, and then 5 in the second, I believe, and ended up taking a 6-1 lead. I think they clawed back a little bit, and ended up like a 6-3 or a 5-3.
6-2, I think it was.
Or was it something like that?
6-2, I think that Chicago lost the first game.
I mean, Chicago, they were kind of there towards the end of the game, like we mentioned. They just took a little slip in the middle, a whole second period off, and Colorado rather made them pay, and just like that. And then the next night, I mean, maybe it was the same thing. I mean, Edmonton, you said, dominated that whole game, took complete control of it, and then got a couple back late. But Chicago's been back on track now. I believe they won their last game.
No, they haven't played a game since.
They haven't played yet since?
They haven't played since those 2 losses. I think that their next game is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Tomorrow.
But they've had a few days off. I think they had 2 or 3 days off. I think every team gets a 3-day rest. And I think this is when Chicago's getting their 3-day rest. Their Sunday was the game that they lost to Edmonton,
so Monday,
I believe.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think that their next game is tomorrow, but I don't think they've played since. Little bit surprised about how bad they look defensively. Not sure if it's defense, though, or goaltending, because neither Crawford or Emery looked very good in either of those games. I mean, I think it was Crawford that was in there for the first loss to Colorado.
And then it was Emery in the second one.
No, it was one of the two. It might have been Emery, it might have been Crawford. I'm not sure. I'm trying to jog my memory. But I know for a fact that against Edmonton, it was Crawford that started, and he got pulled. So, hard to say. He did take an injury earlier in the year. It's hard to say if he's kind of trying to bounce back from that injury. Hasn't really found his game yet. And Emery has been good and didn't really step in, didn't do too much in place of Crawford when he got yanked. Both of them gave up 3 goals over the course of that game. I'm pretty sure Crawford gave up 3 in the first against Edmonton, and then Emery came in and gave up 3 over the next 2 periods. So whether it's just a little bit of a cold streak for the goalies, whether they're slumping or if they're going to get back on track, not really sure. We'll have to see, I guess, when they play again. I guess this rest was kind of something that they did need coming up here, so we'll see what they do when they get back on the ice. We were talking about teams having a little bit of trouble who are at the top of the league, Chicago, who is at the top of the NHL right now, and a team who should be probably at the top of the East, aside from a couple of blown leads. That's Boston, who we just saw last night, blew a 2-0 lead to Pittsburgh late. I think Pittsburgh popped 3 goals in the last 5-6 minutes and just kind of piled it on. They've done it against Tampa Bay. They won that game against Tampa Bay in overtime, but blew a 3-0 or 3-1 lead to Tampa. Blew a couple of leads to Montreal and lost that game in regulation, 4-3. Blew a 3-0 lead to Washington and ended up losing in overtime. So, my question to you, I guess, would be, our team's starting to figure out how to break Boston down, because if you look at them last year, the last couple of years, they've been one of those teams where you look at if you're watching the score tracker, you see Boston up 2-0 going to third. That's game over. They shut it down. They don't lose. They don't lose when they've got those 2-3 goal leads. The game's pretty much over. But are they becoming human? Are they, slowing down? Are teams starting to kind of figure out how to break down their system, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think they might just be becoming human. I mean, obviously, the year they won the Cup there, it was like you said, go up 2-0 and it was shut down. It was over. Even last night we were watching that Pittsburgh game. Going into third, it was 2-0. I thought it was done. I mean, it was in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh being one of the phenomenal teams. I said it's over. Like let's change back to the Jets game because it was just the way that game was going. I thought Boston, the defensive team that they were, I thought they would just shut it down, and they didn't. And we watched it. And we watched all 3 goals, and the way Pittsburgh had dominated that. I guess, in a matter of fact, the whole game out shooting them, it was like 40-something to 16 or whatever. Yeah. The way Pittsburgh had battled back and the way Crosby didn't even get a point in the game, but just the way Pittsburgh had battled back, kept fighting, it was phenomenal to watch. It was great to watch. I mean, it was great hockey to watch. And then Boston tried to climb a little bit after they had given up the 3rd goal, but So I mean, looking back on it now, Boston. I don't want to say so much teams are figuring them out because I mean, Boston. How do you figure them out? Boston's Boston, right? I mean, they are human. Like you said, they've dropped a couple.
They're deep top to bottom. I think what it might be, as I said, they're very deep. They're a good 4-line team, and that's why they're very hard to come back against because there's no real.
They can roll all 4 lines.
There's no shift that you get that's kind of easy. Every line is tough to play against. But I think from what I watched, I didn't see, other than that 3rd period that we watched yesterday against Pittsburgh, but I did watch the entire Tampa Bay game when Tampa Bay came back on them late, tied it up, and then ended up losing to Boston in overtime. And I watched some of the Washington game and that Washington comeback as well when they won in overtime. Washington beat them in overtime. Is that they are a team that gets so set in their way of kind of bogging down the neutral zone and they get a little bit stagnant, and because teams try to play that dump and chase and it just doesn't work. And I think teams are kind of figuring out, when I was watching them play Tampa, you had guys like Stamkos and Conacher and St. Louis, rather than dumping it in, just flying through the neutral zone and actually trying to get in behind, and then you get them moving the wrong way and they can be broken down. So my thought would be, again, they are human, but there is a way that you can kind of break them down rather than trying to chip and chase, because their defensemen are so big and strong that if you try to dump and chase, if you're not first to the puck, you're getting bodied off the puck. Yeah, you're getting bodied off, and Boston's just going to turn around and counterattack on you, or you're going to try to force a bad pass, and Boston's going to counterattack on you, and that's how they score a lot of their goals. Is off of that, sit back, kind of lay in wait, make you try to force something bad, and score on the counterattack. Right? But I think teams are kind of starting to figure out now that rather than dump and chase, try to skate by them, try to get in deep with the puck rather than chase the puck and make them come and chase you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, that dump and chase, and that's obviously what teams were trying to do when they were down 2-0 to Boston, would be to dump and chase and get those big D-men turned around, facing the wrong way, and chase them back into their own zone. So like you mentioned, maybe busting up the middle. Maybe that is working now. Obviously, it's working. It worked for Tampa there, but we'll see, I guess. We'd have to watch the next game and see what teams do if they do get down to Boston.
They do play Pittsburgh again on Sunday, and I think we've got that
around them. So that'll definitely be a must-watch game, I think, and see how that goes because, like we said, either the dump and chase on Chara, but now maybe you're right. I mean, with his long reach, it was obviously impossible to try and get through that neutral zone and then try and beat Chara at the back end of it.
Yeah, no, you're not going to beat Chara. No one's going to take him off the puck in the corner. So I guess teams are kind of figuring out make him skate, make him get turned around and start chasing you rather than put the puck in the corner and try to win a battle with him.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we had picks coming up. I mean, we've got some good games coming up, actually. Some good matchups.
A lot of good games this week, yeah.
But we will take a quick break, and we will be right back with picks. You're watching Hockey Talk right here on Shaw TV. Hello and welcome back to Hockey Talk. My name is Jaret Schneider along with Matt Durnan. Matt, we did our picks last week. Already mentioned once that one of us correctly picked Chicago to get knocked off, so that was pretty impressive to that person, I must say.
Good for you.
But anyway, looking into this week, we've got 7 games on tap once again. Maybe we'll just hop right into it. What do we got for tonight's game?
Well, first of all, we'll do a little recap. Just need to get a hold of yourself. Okay. I went 2-5 again. I'm pretty bad. I'm 23-30. 7 below 500. No. I'm looking pretty poor right now. You went 4-3, another winning week, up to 29-24. So you got a pretty nice little lead on me here. So we're starting out tonight, Philly, New Jersey. A little precursor. Ilya Brizgalov, the crazy spaceman goalie for Philadelphia, said that they play New Jersey twice this week, and he said if they get swept by New Jersey, then they're done. The season's over with. So tonight's obviously there's a pretty important game. You know,
the season's on the line essentially, right?
He kind of threw the gauntlet down for his team. So tonight is a big game. It's in New Jersey, and then I believe they go back to Philly on maybe Saturday. I'm not sure, but Philly is in New Jersey tonight. So what do you think?
Philly's in New Jersey. New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Going on the gut just because if Ilya's going to say that, I don't think they're going to win. They might win the second one. I mean, like you said, they play them twice, but I'll just take New Jersey.
I think Ilya gives a really inspiring speech to his team tonight in the dressing room.
You're saying that wasn't an inspiring speech?
I think he's going to get even more inspiring this time. He's going to have some space-age technology that he's talking about in his pre-gamer, and he's going to play out of his mind tonight. And,
if they even let him talk in the dressing room, he might just be shoved in the corner.
If he even plays, it could be Michael Leighton in net for all we know tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, but I'm still going with Philly. I'm still going with Philly aside of all that.
Okay.
Next one, interesting one on Thursday. We got a couple of teams kind of, in a dogfight for that last playoff position in the East. We got the Rangers sitting in 8th currently with a game in hand on Winnipeg, but Winnipeg is tied with them for points, sitting in 9th right now. Winnipeg coming off a win against my Leafs.
The Leafs last night.
But looked good. One of the best games I think they've played all year, coming up against the Rangers, who've been kind of just even keel most of the year, and it's in Winnipeg. So
it's in Winnipeg. So I think I'm going to take the Jets on this one. Just got a hunch at home. Winnipeg at home. Paul will be happy with that one. I just, they look good last night. I mean, it's hard not to pick them the way they looked last night. So I'll just take the Jets over the Rangers.
Okay, I'll stick with you there. I think, last night, like you said, was probably the best I've seen them look all year, and this could be a bit of a turning point for them. They finally seem to look like they're clicking out there. The crowd was really into it, so maybe that'll give them a little bit more of a boost. They're going to have that Winnipeg crowd behind them, and I think they can beat the Rangers. I don't really think the Rangers are very good, to be honest, but yeah, Winnipeg.
One line, yeah. Anyway,
Friday, Detroit versus Edmonton in Edmonton. Edmonton so up and down this year. Detroit's kind of remained steady, sitting in 7th right now in the West. Edmonton at 12th. Edmonton can look brilliant one night as they did beating Chicago, or they can look brutal the next night like they did losing to Colorado last night, or beating Colorado. Beating Colorado. But they've looked bad in a couple of games. They've looked great in a couple of games.
Yeah, they looked really good against Colorado last night. They went 4-0,
or
4-0 or whatever.
4-0 win, yeah.
I mean, obviously, Edmonton's coming off 2 wins, beating Colorado and then beating Chicago. But I think I'm going to take Detroit on this one. Detroit, even on the road, even back in Edmonton rather. Edmonton just got off that huge road trip they had because of the Tim Hortons Briar, so they're back at home after I believe 9 road games. So back at home, I don't know. I got a feel in Detroit. I think Datsuk's going to come out and go with some nice dangles maybe and score a nice one. But I'm just going to go with the gut here. I'm going to have to take Detroit on the road.
Okay. I'm going to go with you there because just history shows a lot of teams, they have that long road trip and then they always kind of are slow to get back in their stride going back home.
Well, I thought it was Edmonton's. I honestly thought it would make or break Edmonton's season. I thought if they kept it 500, they'd have a shot at the playoffs. But I think they went 3-4-3
They came
on the
out
road
all right.
trip. So
They came out all right.
They got 2 wins in the last 2, so I mean that's pretty impressive.
The West is surprisingly weak this year. I mean, it's a pretty tight race between, you know, I think 4th all the way down to about 9th, 10th. It's pretty tight. You can jump up a few spots.
Yeah.
As has the team that is in the next game, the San Jose Sharks, who have fallen huge, facing the LA Kings, who started out rough, went on a little bit of a win streak, are now sitting in 4th place in the West. San Jose sitting all the way down in 9th. This game's in LA. Anyone's guess, really.
LA and San Jose. It's a tough one. You said it's in LA, so it's a Saturday night game.
Yes, it is.
I gotta take LA. I mean, I just gotta take LA at home, the defending Cup champs. Obviously they didn't start off too well, but they've already jumped back up into the playoffs. So I think LA. I think they're gonna roll here the rest of the way. I mean, not saying they're gonna win the Pacific Division, but they're gonna be there towards the end of the year, and I think this is kind of the point where they really start to get moving forward and get things going here.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with you on that one too. I think LA at home, as you said, probably quietly are one of the hotter teams in the NHL right now. You're not hearing a lot about them just because they had that kind of weak start and they kind of became a little bit of an afterthought. But recently, they've definitely been one of the hotter teams in the NHL. They're kind of cruising now, sitting in 4th. They're comfortably there. You know, they're in a playoff spot. So I think that, and San Jose has been kind of up and down. Just lost to St. Louis, pretty bad. I think 4-2 the other night. You know, they've been really inconsistent. And I think LA's really starting to click now. So Sunday, that game we had spoken about earlier already in the show. Boston visiting Pittsburgh, maybe looking for a little bit of revenge on that comeback game that Pittsburgh put on them on Tuesday night. So it's in Pittsburgh again.
I know, actually, we picked that game
East.
last night, and I picked Boston, and you picked Pittsburgh,
Yep.
and you got the win in that game. So, I mean, as history would show, you'd have to go with the team that won their last meeting. But I think I'm going to go with Boston again.
Okay.
I'm going to try and take Boston. I think they're going to do something this week a little bit differently. Maybe it's back in Pittsburgh. Maybe they get a 4-goal lead and Pittsburgh can't climb back in. I don't know. But, I mean, I'm just going to go with a gut here, and I'm just going to try and take Boston on this one.
Okay, I'll stick with history and I'll go with Pittsburgh again because they won, and that's, I think,
I think they're a better team.
I think that might be the first pick that I've gone against you this year that I've actually won on, so I got to stick with that one and, you know, maybe ride it out a little bit. Pittsburgh, I like what I've seen from them lately. They're starting to click. Malkin, they just found out, is going to be down for another couple weeks. Whether he'll be back by that game,
too, yeah.
We don't know. But they won without him last night. You know, they had a guy like Brandon Sutter step up, score 2 goals. And they won, as you had mentioned, without Crosby scoring points. So if Crosby comes out and has a big game, I don't think there's really any way that Boston's going to be able to shut them down. Monday, here's your big, your crowning glory. Chicago plays in Colorado.
Again.
So
this is
Does Chicago get revenge here?
The third meeting in between these two teams. They've split so far. Colorado got the second one. Chicago did get the first one. It was a Wednesday and a Friday last week. But I'm going to go with Chicago on this. Is it in Chicago?
It's in Colorado.
It's in Colorado. No, I'm still going to go with Chicago on this one.
Why did you ask?
Just because, to reinforce it a little bit more. No, I'm going to go Chicago. I think being obviously the league's top team, it's hard to go against them. I got it right last time, so maybe I'll switch it up and see if Chicago comes back and maybe answers the bell and flips her on me.
Okay. I'm going to stick with Chicago as well with you there. I think, as you said, I think they're too good of a team, and after having lost back-to-back games, I think they're going to kind of get back on track here. They're going to start rolling again. I don't know if they're going to rattle off a huge streak, but I can see them winning, 6 or 7 of their next 8. And this is the perfect team to do. They're going to be hungry after the embarrassment that, that you could arguably say that was one of the most embarrassing losses they'll take all year. So I can imagine them coming out hungry for that one and really trying to get some vengeance on the Avalanche. Last one, a couple of teams kind of, both going in a kind of steady flow, I guess. St. Louis going into Vancouver. St. Louis started out hot, kind of dipped down, but they've moved back up again. They've won, I think, 6 of their last 10, and they're sitting in 5th in the West right now against Vancouver, who just snapped a 4-game losing streak against Columbus, who was riding a 4-game winning streak. Who knows how that happened? And I think that winning streak for Columbus started against Vancouver.
Yeah, I think they've won 7 games, actually getting a point in their last 7 games. So pretty impressive for as far as Columbus goes. But maybe I'll let you take the first crack at this one.
But Vancouver is, I think Vancouver is the better team, and they did drop a couple of games to some fairly weak opponents. Still think they need to figure out their goaltending situation. I still think they're kind of in a spot where they don't know. They're kind of unsure of what their identity is, who their guy is.
Sometimes Luongo has a good game, sometimes Schneider's game, sometimes Luongo has a bad game, sometimes Schneider has a bad game. So I think it bounces around very easily.
It kind of jumps around. But I think getting that win, getting that out of their system, they'll get back on track again. And I think that Vancouver beats St. Louis on that Tuesday night. So.
Okay, and I'll go against you. Maybe I'll go with St. Louis on this one, just on the fact that I don't know. I think they might come out to play. They've been kind of struggling lately. Actually, St. Louis has. So for that game, I don't know. I'm going to go with. I'll just go with St. Louis on that one next Tuesday.
Perfect. So we got me with Philly, Winnipeg, Detroit, LA, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Vancouver, and we share picks on Detroit, LA, Chicago.
Okay,
so we got
split
three
games.
same four sips. So
okay, good.
Could be a big week. I could make a big move.
Yeah, you could get 4 games back on me, right? And who knows? You could
I would go on a limb and
push,
predict that I get 1 right, 2 right, and then I look like an idiot again next week. So.
I guess that pretty much wraps it up for this week. I mean, we've got our picks. Pretty busy week. We'll see what happens this week. I don't know how you can really much top last week. Last week was a pretty big week as far as fights, injuries, suspensions, and teams getting knocked off. So, I mean, we had a pretty busy week, really. We'll see what happens this week. Other than that, for Jaret Schneider and Matt Durnan, thanks for watching.
Good.